Hey guys, Lizardlea here for Four Heavenly Beasts, day 73. Floor husband is now chair husband.
You took my joke. I was going to make the joke.
You didn't say that to me, so I thought I made it up on my own. This is the progress from day 72. The Phoenix is coming along great. I feel like I should be doing this. Oh yeah. More Phoenix. How dare you, sir?
Oui.
He's wearing a mimic shirt, and I'm wearing I might need this later shirt. I am a goblin. I want all of the dice. I want all of the loot.
She does. She's basically like a giant dungeon vacuum cleaner.
I'm gonna go cross stitch and listen to Hold.
Hold.
Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson.
She'll like it.
I think I will.
All right, the first thing I have for us to discuss is actually a video game. It's Detroit Become Human.
It's about how Detroit becomes human and begins to rampage over the United States as a large city and terrorizes the population.
Honestly, I would have so much preferred if you talked about Detroit Rock City, the Kiss song.
That would require me
Because
to
that
know
was
Detroit Rock
ridiculous.
City.
Whatever tirade you just went on was
Do you like
ridiculous. The band?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like a couple songs by Heart.
Okay, good, because I said they were good, but not that good, and I was pretty sure I knew who I was talking about because you had mentioned them, but I wasn't certain. At work. Anyway, so Detroit Become Human is a game that came out in some year, many years past, but looks really pretty still. And it's kind of like those Telltale game style games where there's not a lot of actual gameplay. The gameplay is a mixture of timed responses where you are given some sort of ethical or intelligence-based dilemma of like, oh, what do I need to do here?
Quick time events.
And quick time events and investigations. So like you'll be in a room and you're looking around the room trying to figure out what you want to do, find clues and whatnot, and then all of a sudden something will occur because you've progressed the plot, and now you need to make decisions kind of quickly. And whenever you're talking to somebody, you have a limited amount of time to actually respond. Likewise, you have a limited amount of time to make choices. You have a limited amount of time to do, obviously, quick time events, it's in the name. But they're not the punishing quick time events that you're kind of used to, and they feel a lot more reasonable because there's actual consequences other than you die, haha, redo it. It's just, oh, the story's going to go a different path because you didn't catch up to that person, or because you did catch up to that person, or because you got lost, or because you failed to protect somebody, or because you whatever. I believe there's a couple of other games in this genre, probably even from this studio. This is pulling up all the character names so I can... No, she's pulling up all the actors.
Well, no, it's the characters. It pulled up the wrong thing on Google, so I'm going to the page. How dare you tell my viewers lies?
So Detroit
Literally,
rampages all over the
it
U.S.
says Detroit Become Human characters.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see actors in what I searched for? Nowhere, because that's not what I was looking for.
them in the results.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's what I was searching for.
I'm aware.
But
that's what showed up. So anyways, they the basic idea is this is near-ish future, and it's not going to...
I mean, there's androids everywhere.
Yeah, but it's not like, oh, the whole world has changed and, people have flying cars or anything. Like the houses, outside of the
androids in like every home.
That's the one thing that's different, yes. It's near-ish future. It is not like Dune or something where we're gazillions of years in the future. So, the point is yes, there are androids everywhere. Androids, for all intents and purposes, look human. And for all intents and purposes, are sentient. Not acknowledged as such, maybe not intended as such. That's pretty much the whole point of the game, is you're going to play the point of view of 3 androids, I believe? Connor, Kara, and Marcus, yes. And you're going to play through their stories as they intertwine and overlap, and then decide what you're going to do about the fact that each of these androids is, for various reasons, becoming...
Human.
Yeah, literally human. And a boat. So,
That boat loved me.
Yes, we'll get to that. So, the game is very obviously social commentary of a variety of sorts because, you know, the androids are subalterns or slaves or whatever, you know, fancy word you want to use for it, because they don't have free will at the start. Because they are, in theory, just products, much like replicants in Blade Runner. But unlike replicants in Blade Runner, which, like, 100% have free will, but just have limited lifespans, the androids in this do not. And they actually convey that through gameplay. Like, there will be moments where someone will say, do a thing, and you must do that thing. Or, you know, you're not allowed to go in certain areas. Like, you can't walk in front of a guy who's watching TV because he doesn't want you to, so the game will not let you. It'll put up invisible walls and use it very cleverly. So, as you play through the game, your androids are going to, you know, realize they're people, and then you can kind of decide to embrace that or not, and how are you going to, like, fight for your freedom as you embrace that or not. Like, are you going to be violent? Are you going to lead peaceful protests? What are you going to do? How are you going to interact with the various humans? And of course it goes in a very dramatic area. It's not like, well, we're going to have diplomatic peace talks. It's very extreme.
It gets violent at times.
Yes. That's the base concept. The three people you're playing as, Connor is a detective bot.
He's my cinnamon roll. I love Connor.
Yes, he must be protected at all costs.
All costs.
And yet.
I blame you for that.
You can.
And then you and Mark blamed the game.
Well.
Because it wasn't letting you do the thing.
First they blamed the beasts. Never mind, I doubt anyone gets that. So, Connor is
Detective.
built by they're all built by the same company, but he's owned by the company, and like he's a detective helping the police. He's a
newer model.
He's a
too.
very special, unique model because
Yeah.
like all models roughly look alike, kind of, sort of, like
Until
they all
you
have
put the skin on top of them.
right, but they all have like the same name and like their base look is the same, I think, or something. I forget.
Oh
the
yeah, like there are a ton of ones that look like Marcus. There's a ton that look like Kara.
Yeah, there's the Kara model. That's like the model. It's like your car, like a Toyota Camry. The, you know, blah 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 Connor. You know, Connor is the newest model, and he's special because he's not like for civilian use. He's for, I'm gonna go help the police and help my company solve weird cases, and weird cases, ta-da, happens to deal with weird other androids. He's basically Deckard from Blade Runner. I'm sure you all got that because we talked about Blade Runner. I'm very proud of you, babe. I didn't make you watch that. You chose to watch that because you wanted to date me.
And I'd always wanted to see it, so I was like,
know.
I definitely have a reason right now to buy it and watch it. Let's go.
Yeah. So, that's Connor's thing, and so he's the one you start the game as, the very first mission. And he has arrived at the scene of a hostage situation.
And you have your very first choice to make. There is a broken aquarium. I don't know if that's the right term.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a fish tank. It's huge, but it's broken. And there is fish just, you know, flopping around on the floor. And you get to choose to pick it up and put it in water or to walk away from it.
Yeah.
And in our gameplay, just for reference, David was playing, but I had to make all the decisions, so of course we saved the fish.
Yeah, so to be clear on that, because it's kind of a fun way to play it since it's not by default a two-player game, Liz is not great in stressful situations as is, so I figured quick time events would be less than fun for her, along with ethical dilemmas. So I drove, so to speak, but she had to tell me what to do. So whenever there was an actual choice to be made, it was like, okay, left or right, what do you want me to do? Like, we have literally half a second to decide.
And it was still very stressful.
And then, you know, do I shoot them? Do I save them? Do I, you know, do I say that they look nice?
What do
or
I say? Do I not say anything?
Are their boots ugly? Like, what do you want me to tell them? And, you know, but I would at least drive to try and enact her will as best I could, and it was hilarious. So, yes, so the very first scene is a hostage situation, which again can be resolved in a multitude of ways. Like, certain things are kind of always going to happen, but how you get there can change, and then certain things can actually change, depending on what you do. The game is very branching, and I'll get to that in a bit for reasons. So Connor will eventually, well, I guess we'll go through the three main characters first, and then you meet Kara, who is
essentially being bought by,
No,
he's
she-
not on here, by the guy who is Alice's father.
Yes, so there's a man who has purchased Kara. Actually, he's gotten Kara repaired, not bought.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're
Yes.
right.
She starts out getting repaired. She's at like the air quotes dealership, and he takes her home. And Kara is very clearly a sort of
Figure maiden.
nurse, housewife, maid. What's the other au pair sort of thing, where her goal is to like clean up around the house and
Serve food.
and try to take care of the kid and yada yada yada. And it's very clear that the dad is not in a good state of
Yeah.
mind / not a good person, although again we'll circle back to that.
He's a hard addict.
Yeah, at the bare minimum. So, and then finally we have Marcus, who is also in a caretaker role. He's taking care of this
Elderly artist.
an elderly artist who sees Marcus as just straight up human, basically.
He's basically a son.
Yeah, he
Like,
sees
he
Marcus
treats
as a
him
son.
so well, it's beautiful.
And that said, the guy's real son is, again, kind of a piece of work. And that leads to surprise things.
And for anybody interested, Marcus is played by Jackson Avery's actor from Grey's Anatomy. And it looks exactly like him. So,
And
just
I've been
fun
told
fact.
that this is the truth by 2 people who have watched the show,
Yes.
because I have not. And of other starring roles, the Connors, after his first mission of just solving the thing, will meet a detective he gets partner with named Hank Anderson, played by Clancy Brown of Highlander.
Kurgan.
The Kurgan. And he does a bunch of other good voices. You'll recognize him if you've heard him in anything. He's got one of those voices.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, he's also a bit of a wreck, and we are basically, very quickly, I'm going to do some light spoilers for the beginning of this game, and then I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, and then we'll do a spoiler section, maybe. But the short version is I do recommend playing this game. It's very interesting. It's not hyper violent. It does have some violence, like people get shot and stuff, but it's not like a gore fest. That's not the point.
I mean, I will say, in our run, I chose to be very peaceful. So it doesn't have to be hyper-violent.
Well, even in
but it
that
can be.
way, there are still scenes of
Oh, absolutely.
disturbing material.
But like Mark said when he played, he was just like,
Oh, I know.
no,
Well-
we're evil, we're doing this.
Well, we're
so
not.
his was more violent.
Well, yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm trying not to spoil stuff, but I'm also saying that even if you play hyper peaceful, there are scenes that are kind of disturbing / weird. There's some. We're exploring the whole world of, like, obviously we have these human-like things that we don't treat as human. What would we do with them? It's very clearly an allegory for all sorts of stuff that has happened in real life like that. And ergo, you get into some. It's not like child-friendly, let me put it that way, but it's just not hyper extreme.
There are a lot of guns.
And there's some other adult themes.
Yes.
So, anyways, each character is exploring sort of a different scenario. Connor is paired with Hank on a buddy cop thing of sorts. And again, depending on how you play Connor kind of depends on your interaction with Hank. Liz just wanted to protect Hank and have him love her.
Yes, I wanted Hank to be my best friend forever.
Yeah, with Connor.
And Connor and Hank were my favorite characters. Hank was ultimately number one.
Yes. A dangerous position, but
Yeah, it
so
was.
anyways, so Connor and Hank are exploring the relationship between, because Hank has maybe not lots of, but he has some reasons to not like androids, and so he's very distrusting of Connor. But he's
Got a lot
also
of baggage.
But he's also a reasonable person with baggage, as though you'll meet many unreasonable people with baggage. So Hank has probably the most play in how his story can go, because his feelings towards Connor and androids as a whole can run a wide gamut depending on what you do and don't do.
Yeah, you can heavily influence Hank.
Yeah, and it's also a very fun. There were some of my favorite sections, I think, because they're detective stories. So it's like, oh, we're also solving crimes, and also we're trying to figure out this, and we're also interrogating. So lots of interesting puzzles and stuff. And then some of the more fun, like quick time event craziness of like, oh, we gotta chase this one robot. Like, oh, it went to this room, then it went to this camera. Let's look here, let's look there. Oh my God, they're attacking! They're hitting me with a coat rack. I hope they don't need the caps lock key because my keyboard's bound differently. Inside joke. So, we'll go to Marcus next. I'll save Carr for last. Marcus is again, light spoilers. No matter what you do, very early on, Marcus is going to, for one reason or another, basically die. Except he doesn't, because he's a robot, sort of, android.
I mean, you skipped a lot. He gets blamed for a murder and goes on the run first.
I was trying to skip that, and he's not on the run right away. He gets shot right away and wakes up in the dumpster.
Does he?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he got away first.
No, not really. Because the cops burst in.
Ah, okay.
So he almost immediately, despite having someone in his life who sees him as human, is, air quotes, executed. But surprise, he's kind of okay. He manages to crawl out of the pile of other androids and cannibalize parts to survive, and
that scene was pretty horrific.
right.
That's
the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Where this does touch on more sensitive material. It's obviously going over lots of fun, air quotes, not fun. Sorry, air quotes on fun. It's not fun. Atrocities that have occurred and whatnot. So he is now on the run because he's a rogue android, so to speak. Like, he shouldn't be out there doing whatever he wants. Like, he's supposed to be destroyed, and so he's trying to figure out just how to even survive. Like, he has to hide and figure out what he's doing and see if he can find allies, because he is supposed to be like the police and the scanners in the city will be like, oh, you're not supposed to be here, you're supposed to be decommissioned, like, we need to get rid of you. So that's his whole view, and his arc will eventually lead into him kind of leading the android revolution. He becomes the
head of the resistance.
Yeah, I was gonna relate it to
Terminator?
More like Gandhi or MLK or Malcolm X, or he's the leader of the movement, depending on what kind of movement you want that to be. And so his whole arc is exploring how you're going to take that movement of, hey, we might be people, or if we're not people, we're certainly we still have feelings and we have rights. We deserve rights. How are we going to do that? Are we going to protest? Are we going to burn things down? Can we coexist, or is it us or humans? That kind of exploration of narrative. And then finally, Kara is basically, as we already hinted towards, like, her owner is not a good person. They do play it with a little bit more nuance later, but he's clearly a wreck. Like, you can kind of feel empathetic for the fact that he's become a wreck, maybe due to circumstances beyond his control, but it's the traditional spiral, and he obviously abuses Kara and possibly his child Alice, / tries to. So Kara, very early on, her breaking moment is where she goes to protect Alice because she sees her as her daughter, and so she grabs Alice and runs away, and now she's trying to survive as well. Like, how do I survive with this human girl? Because, like, it's cold out and we don't have money, and I have to...
food.
Yeah, we don't have food. I have to protect this kid. I am the caretaker. What do I do? And so she's literally exploring the idea of, like, do you care about this child who she's supposed to care about, or do you I'll do the bare minimum, but whatever, or there's a lot of Kara's feelings / how do you treat Alice / what's going on here stuff. And so these are the 3 arcs that you're going to explore, with a couple of sub arcs going on here, and more overarching arcs and arc arcs and arc. I'm a seal.
No.
So but they can branch quite a bit. So I'm going to kind of fast forward to once you beat the game / once you beat a chapter, you can see what branches you took, where there were real branches, and kind of see the overall outline of I would have had to go back here anyways, or there's one way to go a completely separate route here, and those branches can even lead into different starting points at different future chapters and different outcomes. And you can also see how common your choice was among all the other people who played. Did you do the thing that everyone else did, or did everyone else very few people didn't save the fish, because surprise,
it's a fish.
It's a poor fish. It's the turtle on its back. What do? What's a tortoise? Yada yada yada. Void conf
You
temps.
save it. That's what you do.
Yeah, well, the guy in the Void conf test. Gosh, didn't know that. Blade Runner. Anyways, the opening.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's a good opening. So you can also reload at certain points during the story to explore other paths and options and see things. So this is the sort of game where if you want to, you can go back and not only replay sections to get the outcome you wanted, which we only did once or twice. We were pretty big on, no, let it rock. Like, we failed, let's see what happens because we failed. Or, yeah, I made that choice and I don't like the outcome, but we're going to let it go. There was one case where we tried to do the right thing and just failed because it was kind of a stupid interface issue. And one case of, like, okay, no, that's just dumb, we're redoing that. Mm-hmm. But in general, we just kind of lived with the consequences of what choices we made. Of what Liz chose. And then went back and explored a few things afterwards. So that's worth knowing because, like, if you're the kind of person who's like, oh my god, there's so many decision paralysis things and I don't like being pressured, don't worry, you can go back, do it again and again and get the result you want. Or if you're more like me who's like, oh, I'd like to see what sort of story I would actually generate if I were going through this, you know, where would I be, you know, viva la resistance versus like, oh, we need to come to the table and chat sort of stuff. It's very interesting. I think that covers...
Another selling point, there's a character, a small character, who is played by Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3. I don't remember that actor's name. Hold a moment.
Oh, yeah,
Where do I see? Neil Newbon. And it looks exactly like him. So the man hasn't aged in how long.
Yeah, he's a
how
vampire.
old this game is. I know exactly.
And an elf. They never age. Half elf, whatever. So,
High elf.
Ew. Anyways, so yeah, I think. So first of all, if any of this sounds interesting, I think the game's pretty cheap. Play it. It's very pretty. It's fun to play. It's interesting. The world's really well realized. Liz and I both, for the most part, like the story. There are some things that are in spoiler territory that I know we're going to discuss, though. That's why I want to discuss spoilers, because it's like, really? There are moments, like, let me put it this way. Given the stories I've just described to you, this manages to, for the most part, touch on these issues in a variety of ways. It's not just the extreme good and extreme bad. It really handles nuance and different points of view pretty well. Like, if you had just told me, like, when I first heard the plot about this game, and the reason I probably never touched it until my friend said, no, we need to play it, was because I was like, oh, great, it's going to be, do I kill the baby or save the baby?
Yeah,
like,
it's going to be obvious what you should do.
You know, like, okay, sure. But no, or, you know, again, like, oh, well, all humans are evil, or all humans are good. Like, no, it really...
It threads that needle really well for the most part.
And it makes a lot of characters who, in worse writing, wouldn't have any excuse or wouldn't be sympathetic in any regard, somewhat sympathetic or understandable. Again, the legitimately, abusive dad, like, nothing he does is okay, but it's not just he literally woke up and hate everyone.
Violence.
Yeah, like, he has... They bothered to go the extra mile to at least be like, okay, I see what drove him to this. It doesn't make it right, but, like, you bothered to give him a backstory other than just, we need a bad guy.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big, big part of the game, because getting to understand the various characters is important and why they do things, because it influences maybe why you will make certain choices, because you'll have multiple choices about how you deal with these people, and you may be more or less harsh depending on what you discover and what you know and how you feel about it. So with all that said, if any of this is interesting, again, spoiler warning, we're going to dive into some fairly major spoilers. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I know the one me and Liz are both going to want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Kara and Alice. It is...
God, it was my favorite until it wasn't. And then it became my least favorite, and I genuinely hated it because of what they did.
So I think the most interesting thing about the Kara and Alice storyline is it's the most direct case of the android showing that they can care for humans and not dealing, like, Connor and Hank is kind of a weird, like, antagonistic adult thing. Like, Hank can take care of himself, but also he's clearly self-imploding and on the edge of, well, literal suicide. And Marcus, like, loses the person he's taking care of immediately and is then on just, like, I need to take care of these other androids and help them. So Kara being like no, look, androids can be good. Like, how much do androids care about non-androids is the question for Kara. Because Alice, this little girl, is not an android. So do you risk your safety to make this little girl more comfortable? How much will you go out of your way to protect her? Like, you're not allowed to, like, throw her off the bus, you know?
But, like, you could steal someone's jacket.
Yeah.
You could steal food from the supermarket.
Yeah.
You could break into an abandoned building to make sure she's warm. You could break into a car.
Yeah.
Like, especially because it's raining.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man, that was a moral quandary for me. Because I was
Yeah.
like, I really want to take care of this little girl. Like, I do not want her to die. I almost stole... Was the guy homeless at the laundromat? It was unclear.
He was not in a great place.
Yeah, he was at the very least in a rough patch. I was going to steal his jacket, and then Alice was like, what? You can't steal from him? What's wrong with you?
Right.
And I was like, God, even this little girl knows that I'm being a bad person, but, like,
But I'm
I
doing
don't
it for
want her to
her.
freeze to death. Like,
Right.
I don't have any money, and if they catch me, I'm going to get in trouble, and she's going to get taken back to her dad, who I fully believed he was going to beat her. So I was like, I can't let this happen. What did we do? Break into a car? An abandoned car? I think so. I was too nervous to break into the abandoned building.
Yeah. Well, no, because we did break into the abandoned building. We got out of the car because she said it was too cold.
Oh, yeah, it forced us.
No, it didn't force you.
Well,
you chose.
It forced us out of the car, or at least I felt it forced us out of the car. Because I was like, I can't let her freeze to death. Like, I cannot, because I can't keep her warm. I'm an android. Like, it was my favorite of the plot lines at the start, because it was like, this android cares about this girl, this human girl, as if it's her daughter. And that little girl cared about Kara as if she was her mother. And it was like, this is just a beautiful relationship. And, you know, like, it's essentially a mother and her daughter.
Yeah.
And, like, the fact that it's, I don't know, interspecies doesn't sound like the right term, but, like...
But, yeah, whatever they're screwing
it's
with
like
here.
when a dog adopts a little kitten, you know?
Yeah.
You're always like, oh, that's a mother for you.
Yeah.
They will take care of a baby no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a puppy or a kitten. Like, they will
Right.
do it. And so I felt that with Kara and Alice, and it was so beautiful. I loved it so much.
They keep that for about half the game, maybe
I felt
2/3.
3/4.
I'd say 2/3,
2/3,
maybe
okay.
3/4.
More than half, though.
Before, because it's kind of foreshadowed in a way. It's hard to tell if it's like, well, the game's just making things work because they're not going to murder this child versus like whatever. But again, massive spoiler, it turns out Alice is a droid too. So that's the thing, is that this guy lost his wife and his daughter, and so he bought a replacement for both. And so it just nukes. So, like, our friend thought it was really, really cool. I think it could have been okay, but it felt like such a sacrifice of what was such a strong and incredible narrative of, like, because again, Kara can be a lot less motherly towards Alice. It's not like she'll just straight up let her die, but at the same time, she can be much more like, nah, I don't care, she's not an android, she's not me.
Versus I had her cuddle.
Yeah,
I was like, this is your daughter. You're going to do everything a mother would do.
Right, and so with that in mind, you can decide, you know, to what level, and it's a really interesting interaction.
Just fix the chair already.
I'm literally trying. It's a really interesting interaction, and then they just kind of like, oh, by the way, she's been an android this whole time. And it's
so
like
all these moral quandaries I had of like stealing clothes, stealing food. I was like, so it was all pointless.
because she doesn't need to eat, she doesn't get cold, she feels cold, but you can just turn off her.
Turn it off.
And the thing is Kara has forgotten that Alice is an android this entire time. And Alice doesn't know she's an android, or does, I forget. Again, it's sort of an awakening thing. It feels, given the elegance with which they handle most of the plot, it feels like one of the more ham-fisted things. And to me, it felt like a legit shift in writing, where they just went, like, I'm not even sure Alice was originally an android. Like, I could believe that Alice in the original drafts, and maybe even the original game design, wasn't an android. And then at some point someone said, no, we can't have her being a human child
Because she can die.
because she can die before the end, and that will be a problem, so make her an android. Or it could have just been that's the way they wanted to do it. I don't know. I have no desire to look into it. I just felt like it was such a weak reveal because it really kills...
It killed the momentum for me.
And there's also, what's his name you meet? Luther? Or...
Oh, the black guy?
Yeah.
Oh, what was his name? I loved him so much.
Yeah.
It's been almost a year since we played this game, you
Yeah.
guys. Oh gosh, looking through all of this, I don't know if
They're
I'm gonna...
tiny pictures.
Oh no.
But yeah, basically you form a little family unit with this guy who's also protected. Like,
I wonder if I go into Kara's.
Yeah,
if it'll show me more.
well, it's gonna have to say she met so and so. Luther. Yeah. There it is.
Luther, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Luther so much.
Yeah, I was right. So Luther is another character who you will meet along your journey who will kind of agree with, like, yes, this girl needs to be protected. And so now you've got, like, this little family unit, and it's like, yeah, these are two androids who have shown compassion for a human child. Like, this is really a strong argument, like, against the naysayers and the androids. Like, wouldn't this be a great way to show, like, yeah, they're not dangerous, they don't have to be, they still feel things, they still understand compassion and humanity and sentience and all this. And then it becomes, oh, well, she's an android too. And it's like, it was such an interesting dynamic, and I was curious to see where it would go. And then it just goes to...
Nowhere.
Pretty much. And then it's like, oh, well, she's also a child android. Will you protect a child android? Like, well, yeah, you're still treating her like a child and like she needs to be protected. But now, like, a huge part of the entire driving force of the first 2/3 of Kara's story is... the human is fragile in comparison to you. Like, Kara is too. Like, these androids are not immortal. Like, the fact that Marcus got shot and is okay is rare. It's like, literally, he's barely okay and only just able to cannibalize parts, and even still, there's all sorts of problems they have. But they're not, like, they do require, like, this weird energy sustenance stuff and all these other things, but they have totally different needs and wants. So caring for this little girl was such an interesting part of it, because you're on the run, you're caring for the girl, you need to keep her warm, you need to keep her fed, you need to keep her safe, you need to keep her away from dangerous people, or you need to let her meet the Jerrys or the...
I loved the Jerrys.
Yeah.
They were adorable.
Yeah, or all these other things. And then it's like, oh yeah, that was no, you didn't need to do any of that. Like, she would have been fine. You could have treated her like garbage and she would have been fine, because she's an android and she has the exact same needs you have. And I even feel there's maybe one or two little, like, you think about it later, plot holes that are opened up by that. But again, it's just such a shame, because, like, the Kara plotline up until that point is just
perfect.
Golden writing. Like, 5 out of 5. Connor plotline is mostly 5 out of 5. Marcus, to me, is like 3, 4 out of 5.
His was the weakest.
It's not bad, it's the standard, like, are you going to be peaceful in your revolution, or are you going to be violent? And Liz was all in on peaceful, our friend was all in on, it's us or the humans. I'm curious what happens if you try to thread the needle down the middle, but doesn't matter, because his is the most traditional story.
Yeah.
It's still interesting, it's not, the writing for Connor and Hank and for Kara and Alice is really so much better than it needed to be, that I would have watched a show, I would have read a book. Like, it was really, really good. And then that Alice thing just kills all the momentum of their story, and their story also kind of
peters out.
It doesn't exactly... Yeah, it just keeps centering on, we need to escape, we need to escape, we need to escape.
And then, of course, they have to just up the ante each time.
Right, every time they try to escape...
We were attacked by essentially a serial killer.
Yeah.
And...
there's yeah, it's very... It covers some interesting stuff, like the dangers of trying to escape and being, air quotes, off the grid, where it's like you're no longer protected by society and people can take advantage of you. And that is an interesting thing for them to explore, obviously. But the upping of the ante feels weird sometimes, because it's like they keep solving the problem, it appears, and then, oh no, it's unsolved. And then the ending is very like, well, we've got to escape to Canada, so we have to cross the border. And literally.
Yeah.
And it feels very like the only way to get the air quotes to get the actual happy ending there feels very like that's kind of against the moral you've been teaching this entire time and like the idea that you've been going for. Like, granted, you can justify it if you overthink it or think about it, but it just doesn't feel like it fits with the moral they were trying, like, or rather, maybe not the moral they were trying to push, but the moral that they were allowing you to stick with. They really punish you in a weird way if you stick with certain things, and it's very. It's like, okay, I'm all for the like pragmatic, like, well, yep, you tried to be a good person the whole way and world doesn't work that way kind of ending, but it didn't feel like it fit with that storyline and the way they did it. There's a lot of, the back half of their story, or the back third, is just weak. And it's a shame because it starts as easily like the thing, that and Connor kept me invested in this game. Like, if it was just Marcus, I'd be like, I probably wouldn't have finished.
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah, even though Liz loved the boat.
And the boat loved me.
So the joke with this is, there's a.
What was the name of the boat?
It's there's a secret group that Marcus finds and becomes the leader of, and no, that's not.
Oh, is it Ship?
Yeah. I would just call group, because I would just look at Marcus's plot. It's got to mention it all over there because it's the name of the group.
That's true. It's all over.
Because so what happens is Marcus finds a hidden group that's hiding out in this ship called something or other. Liz is looking it up.
Jericho.
Jericho, yeah. I knew it was something religious. Yeah.
I knew it was a man's name.
So Jericho is supposed to be the faction, but since Jericho's hiding in a ship called the Jericho, there's a relationship meter with Jericho, the faction. And so the first time we saw it, Liz is like, does the boat love me? Because you can have the Jericho faction like you more or less, but Jericho's the name of the boat. So the entire time we're like, does the boat love me? I want the boat to love me.
It did really love me.
Yes, Liz got the boat to love her. And I forgot that, yeah, Marcus's only interesting thing, which also I feel like it kind of fell flat, is he has the love interest. I forgot about that. North, yeah.
See, and I thought that was meh.
It's, she's another android, so, but she's the revolutionary. So the question is, are you going to go against your love interest even for your views? Because she's
a little more violent.
She's more radical, I believe would be the term.
Yeah, that's a better term.
Than you might be. Depends. And there is someone more radical than her. She's not the most extreme. Who has? Is it? No, someone has the bomb plan. Is that North?
I feel like it was North, and I took the controller from her because I was like, I don't trust you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the things can escalate dramatically. Like, things
yeah.
will escalate no matter what, but they can increasingly escalate. Again, I give it a lot of credit because they didn't try to make this 40 games or with a zillion other subsystems. This kind of does what some of those Mass Effect games are trying to do, where you can have a drastically different story than other people. Like, certain beats have to occur. You're still going to be like, okay, Kara escaped with Alice, Connor and Hank are investigating weird stuff, Marcus has met Jericho. But where it goes from there can be pretty big, and certain major characters can live or die at certain points, and even certain protagonist player characters can wind up on different sides of the conflict, to the point that you're literally fighting yourself. And you can wind up fighting yourself anyways, actually, because joke. Again, fairly major spoiler, but one of the more interesting things they deal with Connor is Connor can die. In fact, Connor can die a lot. If you want.
But they bring him back.
But they bring him back. And then eventually, Connor can run into another Connor who has his memories, who has his stuff, and they even do the cliche, oh no, don't shoot me, shoot him, but it's justified and kind of well done there, because, yeah, this is one of the few excuses to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was a whole factory of Connors, too.
Yes, it was a Connor factory. A Connor...
Hank made the correct decision in my route.
Yes.
And that's all I care about.
And shot them both. No.
No.
So yeah, there's a lot of really, really interesting themes being played with throughout these stories. Obviously, some better than others, but mostly well done. And it's an easy recommend. Like, it's very clearly talking about, like, obviously things like slavery and subjugation and rights, and when is violence and resistance appropriate versus when is passive violence appropriate, when is just like what. all those things. And again, they do it with a fairly light touch. Like, it's very obvious it's what it's about, but they don't just shove in your face that, like, well, they don't always just shove in your face that, like, one answer is right and one answer is wrong. Like, people, it manages to convey that one of the scariest things about these situations is that people are scared. And thus, you're dealing with a lot of people who just want to be okay, but you wanting to be okay and them wanting to be okay could very quickly escalate into one of you not being okay. So you need to decide, do I just screw it? I'm going to be okay at the cost of them? Are you going to try and de-escalate before it gets to that? If it does escalate, are you going to try and avoid, or is it back to, it's me or them? Like, lots of that gets touched upon in a lot of different ways. And it's just, it's nice to see something touch it with that kind of nuance when I generally expect games like this to just hit it with a hammer, like, oh, you didn't, I was trying to give like a Baldur's Gate example that wasn't too horrible, but I can only think of the most horrible ones. Of like, well, did you save the gnome or did you launch him into the stratosphere? Like,
the windmill. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. I was thinking of like the squirrel or the other things that are even more egregious, but at least has a point. But like Baldur's Gate actually does it pretty well too in a different way. But there's a lot of games that I usually skip that I think have done it much worse. I know in the era, I think of this game, there was like 2 games that came out. So you had Mass Effect with its like, oh, what do you want to do? Do you want to be, yes, sarcastic no, or no, kind of fake choices / maybe real choices / overreaction choices. I disagree with this person. Haul off and punch them. And then you had, Infamous was one of them, where it was like, oh, you can do the hero, the paragon thing, or the villain thing. And they were like, oh yeah, and BioShock at this time. Like, do you free the little kid, or do you harvest the child? Like, yeah. And I mean,
the Little Sisters?
The Little Sisters, Big Daddies, yeah. And Infamous was around that time, and this is where developers love the, choose whether you're good or evil thing, but it was pretty phoned in. It was like, look, you're going to make 12 choices throughout this game, whatever number's higher at the end, you're going to go that route. Or maybe there's a couple of small branches, whereas Detroit Become Human really made it the center of their game. And some serious divergences can occur, and they made like quick time events interesting because you're willing to play them and live with the consequences. Usually, there's a few that might force you to restart if you fail, where it's like, yeah, no, we can't. Game over. Like you've ruined everything.
Yeah, that one where we were in that area as Connor, and it was like, oh, you need to go this way and get to the glowing orb or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's right at the end.
Yeah, well, yes, but I mean, this is what I'm saying. Is like we were going, and it timed us out, and we still could not find it.
Yeah.
And so we restarted, and Mark was like, okay, I know where it is, because I played this game so much. You need to go this way.
Yeah.
And we made it.
Yeah, and the thing is like, in hindsight, it's kind of obvious there's just a bad camera shift at the start that like points you in the wrong direction.
Oh, it was a really bad camera
Yeah, no, I know. But the reason that one was annoying because the game was about to end, and a disturbing amount of what happens for your ending actually hinges on whether or not you do the thing there, and you're always going to want to do the thing. You're not going to choose to just die at that point. So it was kind of frustrating. But I'm more talking about, like, way earlier on in the game, if you fail catastrophically, you have to live with the consequence. I mean, you don't have to, but the game will continue on. It'll be like, yeah, you didn't catch the guy, you didn't solve the problem, you died if you're Connor, and you'll come back, it's fine. You didn't,
You can die as Kara and Marcus, though, but that severely guts your game, is my understanding.
Yes. And so, like, you can play on with the consequences in most cases. There's very few cases where it's like, yeah, we kind of needed you to not mess up this bad. Like, yes, congrats. You got caught and you're dead, the end. Would you like to finish the game now? Like, so, yeah, highly recommend it. I give it like a 4 out of 5 just because the writing for Kara went off a cliff and I have a few other problems. I have anything else? Yeah.
And I loved Hank. So, if you're still here and you're still trying to decide if you want to play the game or not, I will say, what?
Play it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's also not too long. That's another thing that's worth
noting. No, it took us, not even 2 weeks?
Well, like, and that's of, like, 1 hour playthroughs at night. Like, I think our total playtime was, like, 20 hours, I think, tops.
That sounds right. I was going to say 18 to 20. So.
Yeah, which is, like, for RPGs and whatnot, obviously not huge. Like, some of you are like, oh my god, 20 hours. But it's not
again, it's not trying to drag it out. Like, again, this was especially then an era of like, well, how many hours of playtime do I get? It's like, well, you get 150, but 80 of them are running in circles going back and forth between 2 points. So having something that's a nice, tight story that doesn't overstay its welcome is really good. So
Yeah, like it is very linear. I don't remember a lot of moments where I was like, what are we supposed to do? Or, this is so boring, I don't want to continue. It was always like, what's going to happen next? Does the boat still like me?
yeah. We had a lot of jokes from the game, a lot of fun from it. There's a lot of stuff that's fun to make fun of. There's a lot of stuff that's like actually moving and interesting. And it's just, it's such... I wish people would make more games like this. Like, I know, as the nerd, I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, yeah, they should put this kind of decision-making in every game. And the problem is production resources and time are a thing. You can't just take, I don't know, Street Fighter and throw in an entire moral implication system on top of it. Like, it took that long just to make Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
It also took that long to make Detroit. There are costs that need to be addressed. But it's really cool to see a game that had the guts to say, no, we're going to make a real determinist, or a real game about choices and story and consequences, and explore some of these themes, and we're going to do it well. I know there's other games, the Telltale games, some of the horror games you watch that have choices and consequences.
Oh, but it still always goes the same way no matter
Well,
what.
well, and they also feel more gamey, where it's like, if you don't stop the murderer here, like, well, because you chose to not grab the pipe, you don't have the pipe now, and you split up with the group, and so now the murderer kills you. It's not a really interesting exploration of things. It's still a fun game, but this is like, it's a genre that I don't think is well enough explored, when it could be much more explored. And it's hard to explore it well because, yes, it's really easy to phone in the writing. And you have to have good writing, you have to have good set pieces. And like even this one, I feel like probably phoned in the writing maybe a little bit for Kara and Alice. And again, I think that's because at the end they wanted to have you make choices that could lead to really bad consequences. And the ESRB rating board has opinions about death of children in games, which is why if you've ever played any video games with violence, usually children are immortal, because it's a big, big deal if they're not.
As it should be.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said for it's like, well, so to be clear here, I can, commit literal genocide and enslave populations and burn cities to the ground, but this little kid...
Oh no, I totally get it. I understand.
If as a consequence of me burning the city to the ground, if the child dies on screen, that's an immediate, we may not be able to sell this game. It's a thing. I could talk too much about that too. But yeah, so I that's my conspiracy theory on why the writing went off a cliff. It's just as possible they think that's fine and I'm just wrong and you might like the writing anyways.
Like, the argument I always read and heard from Mark and everything else was... Obviously, this is supposed to be like the equivalency of racism.
Mm-hmm.
The androids are supposed to be black people. The humans are supposed to be white people. And by making Alice an android, you essentially have gone from, oh, you think she's white, to, oh, you think she's black, and now you don't care about her because she's black. And that, personally, just for me, upsets me, because I'm like, that's not what it is for me.
I don't think Mark made that argument.
No, okay, then it was just online.
That's on the. I was like, no, there's no way Mark made that argument.
Well, I mean, he was. Well,
Mark
okay, at
liked
the very
it.
least, he liked it. He thought it was a good twist or whatever.
He did, yes.
Yeah. But everybody else was like, oh, if you don't like the twist, it's because you're racist. And I was like, they're both white to begin with, for what it's worth. I don't care what race they are. I care that this, to me, felt like a story where... So I did the severe pacifist route. My androids were the greatest beings in existence.
Yeah.
Because they did not lift a freaking weapon. They...
Rarely.
Okay, well, they didn't...
Connor, like, Kara protected herself and Alice, but she would try...
hurt? She ran.
She fights in the building where...
The serial killer guy?
Yeah, I mean...
Well, I'm okay killing the serial killer. And, by the way... I call him a serial killer. He was killing androids.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about, of like, I was attached. And I loved the idea that this android and this human had this mother-daughter relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it was for me. I don't have a child, but I did have a cat that a lot of you know I loved. And I'm going to start crying if I keep talking about her. So I viewed it in that lens of like, this, motherhood transcends everything else.
Yeah.
And that's what it meant to me. I'm still gonna keep crying. And when they dropped that, it didn't mean as much to me, because it was like, well, yeah, of course she's gonna care about the android child.
Yeah.
Like, they're both androids. It felt like more when it was an android and a human.
And to kind of put some more light on this, like, the idea that Kara could, in theory, give herself up to save Alice because Alice was a human was an interesting thing they had been playing with. And then the idea that, like, I was legitimately expecting that one of the possible outcomes, and I was expecting to see it in Liz's run because, she was all sunshines and roses, whereas Mark was ready to, get out the guillotines, was that Marcus would, say, hey, here is an android who has been protecting a human child. Are you really, this human child loves this android like her mother, and this android loves her like her daughter. Are you really going to slaughter us all and this human child, because, I figured that would be a huge plot point, and then it just couldn't happen because, oh, she's an android. Because, obviously all the stories are converging at the end, and there's all these big moments, and it just, to Liz's point, yes, there's a lot of dumb discourse about this game because people can't discuss things with nuance anymore. So yes, there's people out there calling each other racist and sexist and everything because God forbid you have a different opinion about the video game. But yeah, I've known many idiots. I don't like spending a lot of time talking with them if I can afford it.
Oh yeah, no. I don't discuss anything on the internet. I just read everything.
Yeah.
Sticking with the kind of sad route, Hank, we're in the full spoilers and we're on near the end of the video anyways, lost a son before the game begins.
Yeah.
So he's an alcoholic and he is suicidal. At one point he does try to kill himself. Obviously, as Connor, you can rescue him. Obviously we did, because I love Hank.
I don't even think he can die there, can he?
Yeah, I thought maybe not, but I mean, it's really hard. My understanding is it's actually kind of hard to keep Hank alive.
By the end of the game.
You have to be good friends with him as Connor in order for him to not take his own life at the end.
Yeah, at the end of the game, in almost every other, if you don't very heavily dedicate to being friends with him as Connor and showing him hope again, basically, he will, even though things went good for everything else, and maybe you save the day and solve the case and he likes Connor, he will still succumb to his depression. Yeah.
Thankfully, obviously, I wanted Hank to love me as Connor, and he did. He made it to the end, to the point where he's eating a cheeseburger, and as Connor, I was like, you shouldn't be eating that. You have, really bad cholesterol or whatever. And to me, Hank and Connor, the epitome of that was, essentially, Hank is like a father figure to him. Obviously, the age doesn't quite work out the same way it did with Kara and Alice, but it's an interesting of a human and an android who have this kind of relationship that you definitely have had or seen with other people, and this is a robot and a person. It boils down to the same thing for me that Kara and Alice do of this is beautiful because we've seen it in our world.
Yeah.
And
they managed to be friends despite different, obviously they respect each other and whatnot. It's so much more touching in Kara and Alice's thing because it's the, Connor actually can protect Hank as well. There's big questions about whether or not he will protect Hank at certain points and scenes. Do you want to try and save Hank or do you want to try and do your job?
And Hank will absolutely try and save Connor a couple times if you're good friends with him at least.
And he'll even get annoyed at Connor for Connor putting his own life on the line, what Hank sees as needlessly, or for doubling back to help Hank if he thinks that you should have kept giving chase, I would have been fine. There's a lot of interesting dynamics there, but it's still as equals. Whereas the idea that Kara is the sole caregiver for this poor girl, we can talk about it all day. Play the game.
Yeah, please do. I know, obviously, we weren't happy with the end of Kara and Alice's story, but that first part of it was beautiful. David can tell you, I was freaking out over Alice.
Yeah.
I didn't have a panic attack. It wasn't that bad, but I was nervous. I was shaking. I'm shaking now discussing this.
Liz is very empathetic when she plays her games, and the game does a very good job of evoking those emotions. And Liz was like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do? How do I do this? I don't,
like one of the tip offs that Alice isn't human is we get her a plate of spaghetti. I was freaking out that she wasn't eating it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, clearly she's nervous. She needs to rest. We need to get out of the room.
Because there's like a unstable person in the room with you who has literally cooked a
and I need them to
raccoon.
leave with me.
Yeah.
And no, the spaghetti was later.
Oh, that's right.
With
That's right.
the
Yeah.
mother and the son.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But like I was literally, I was doing everything I could to protect Alice, because it's like, and honestly, even if the roles had been reversed, if Alice had been the human, or excuse me, if Alice had been the android and Kara had been the human, I probably would have done it the same way of like, this is a child.
Yeah.
You have to protect the child.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she needs this like oil or whatever. We need to get it for her because she's a child. She has the mentality of a child.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, I got emotional. This is how I am. This is how I play games, how I watch movies and shows, how I read books. I get attached. And I care.
And then they die. Because they're her favorite.
I loved, oh my gosh, Luther. I loved Luther so much.
Yeah.
He died in my run. I was not good with that.
Yeah, that's the one where you get punished pretty heavily, because if you try to do there's one choice, again, it's a little frustrating that it all boils down to that one choice, but in the Kara and Alice route, there's one choice right at the end that if you don't take, you're not all making it. Full stop.
Can they all make it? I thought Kara
Yes.
or Luther had to sacrifice themselves.
No, if you take the tickets.
Oh, but you have to take it from a family
Yes.
with a baby.
Yes.
And that was my thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have Kara, but she's not a literal infant.
Yes.
That was what won me
Yes,
over.
and that's why I think that's a weird choice. And there's some arguments that's like, well, they're just panicking for no good reason, and if you're on the safe thing, but
It's an infant.
It feels like a lot of post justification. It's very clear what the moral. It's very clear what the moral quandary there is.
Yeah.
And it's very understandable that there are people who would think, no, that's just not going to be okay. We're in a better position than they are, at least. And it sucks that if you don't do that thing,
Someone has to die.
yeah, you're going to lose someone, if not everyone. And in fact, in your version, you lost everyone.
We lost everybody. And I wasn't sure.
I think the first time you lost just Luther, and then you reloaded it because you're like, oh no.
We did reload it.
And then you
because
chose
I wanted to try something else, and then we did something else, and that led to everybody dying.
And
I
you were
was
like, honestly, I like that better, fine.
Well, at that point, I was like, I've already made you reload. I feel like
Yeah.
it's unfair to not accept, some of my consequences. Like, the other worst decision I feel like I made was, were they strippers? Or
They were
worse?
sex workers of some sort, yes.
So they were androids. There were these two, and they were in love, and they wanted to escape. They had killed, one of their guys
Yep.
because he was literally beating it. He would beat androids to death.
Yes.
And
Again, very serious themes in this game.
Oh, yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the sort of stuff I was trying to get at.
oh well,
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the spoiler round.
No,
at the end of the
yeah.
video,
Not over spoilers.
so-
It's way easier to be like, yes.
So we're trying to capture them, and
They attack.
then they start attacking, and one of them gets a gun, or is it a bat or something? Like
They are
get
basically
weapons.
beating up Connor and Hank.
And Hank.
And you're playing a very difficult quick time event.
And so David was playing, and I was telling him what to do. He as Connor got a gun, and he was pointing it at the girl who was literally coming at him with like a lead pipe or something.
Or at Hank, I believe.
Was it at Hank?
I think it's Hank.
Okay. Well, either way, Hank and Connor were my favorite characters.
Yes.
So if either of them were in trouble, I said to shoot her.
Yes.
And Hank immediately got angry with me, as did David and Mark.
Well, I didn't get angry. I was just like, whoa! Because I did not expect her to have the guts to say pull the trigger. Because, again, I kind of stereotyped your playstyle where I was like, oh, she's always going to choose the nice person thing. And she didn't, to her credit. But especially in that moment, I thought Liz would never choose to willingly kill a character. I thought it might be a consequence of inaction or unexpected. But I didn't expect her to say, no, pull the trigger, like, it's Hank or...
Or death.
stripper bot dies. Like, and
I was like-
Hank even calls you out on it.
Oh yeah,
and
he was
says,
super mad at me.
he's
but I
like,
was
why
just
would
like,
you do that?
you could be killed by a lead pipe very easily. I'm just saying, like, I didn't see any other potential route in that moment, especially because, again, I get nervous and I freak out with quick time events. And it was counting down, like, you only have a limited amount of time before you're required to make decision. I am slurring my words really bad. Even now, thinking about that moment, I'm shaking. Like, this is how I am. So I said, shoot her. And everyone got mad at me. And then I was like, well, what else could I have done? She was straight up gonna kill Hank. And I can't have her kill Hank. He's my buddy.
To my memory, and because we talked about this afterwards. Because again,
Afterwards,
this
yeah.
is the point. The game puts you in these situations where you have to make a judgment call based on your information. And my friend had already played the game, and I assessed the situation, I believe, the same way Hank did, which was
They're just trying to run.
she's trying to run past you, not at you, or something like that. I don't remember the exact specifics, but yeah, it's that she's not an active threat at that point, or at least not a life-threatening threat. Like, you could let her get away, you could chase her down, but you probably don't need to shoot her. It's maybe a small risk, but like, she's not an immediate danger. But again, it's very good
I
at
could
putting
not
you
take
in that
that
situation of like, oh God, she's been trying to kill us, and something's going on, and she's running. And like, it very purposely sets up that like, okay, flight or fight response.
Yeah,
and
blood is pumping, you gotta do something.
I now don't try to scare or surprise Liz.
That's not true.
Because not on purpose, just my existence is terrifying. But
But yeah, like, it's a beautiful
we match.
game. I definitely recommend it. Yes, we both have on black tops and gray pants.
Yes.
High fives, babe. I recommend the game highly. Especially for Connor and Hank, okay? Okay, I think that's the end of the video. We've been talking for an hour.
And that is the end of For Heavenly Beasts Day 73. I only got 3 hours and 17 minutes of footage, but my eyes are bothering me, and I don't want to push myself. But I mean, I got a lot of red, pink, whatever. Red-ish. We'll go with that. So yeah. Progress is still progress. But I need to relax my eyes. David is not here because we have a friend from out of state visiting. So when they get back, I would also be not cross-stitching at that point. So might as well just call it now and be done with it. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next video.